Have you ever been judged for who you are? They laughed at the black kid who wore camouflage to school, until his father landed a black hawk on the football field. But before they got to that devastating revelation, everyone at Lincoln High had to learn a brutal lesson about judging people by their appearance. The military uniform was 2 sizes too big for 16-year-old Kevin Washington's skinny frame, but he wore it with a dignity that contrasted sharply with the laughter echoing through the hallways that Tuesday morning. The rolled-up sleeves revealed arms that trembled slightly, not from fear, but from a controlled anger that only those who have faced real battles can master. "Look at Bargain Bin G.I. Joe," shouted Tyler Morrison, the quarterback whose ego was inversely proportional to his IQ. He paraded through the hallways surrounded by his court of admirers, all laughing like hyenas over easy prey. Did anyone tell Kevin that Halloween is only in October? Ever wondered how someone turns humiliation into power? Kevin kept his eyes fixed ahead, his footsteps echoing differently. Not the uncertain footsteps of an ordinary teenager, but the controlled march of someone who grew up listening to commands and learned that respect is earned through discipline, not popularity. The morning had started like every other morning for Kevin since he moved to that school 3 months ago. His mother, a nurse at the military hospital, had secured a transfer after his father was assigned to a classified mission overseas. What no one knew, and Kevin was careful to keep it that way, was that today marked exactly 1 year since he had last spoken to the most important man in his life. "Hey, rookie!" Ashley Bennett's shrill voice cut through the air like a razor. She was the kind of girl who ruled the school through gossip and cruelty disguised as honesty. "You do know we're in a school, not a battlefield, right? Or are you so dumb you can't tell the difference?" Kevin stopped in front of his locker, his skilled hands working the combination as if it were a military precision mechanism. Inside, taped to the door, was a faded photo of a man in full uniform, his chest covered with medals, smiling next to a younger Kevin. The image was strategically positioned so that no one else could see it. A secret kept as ammunition for the right moment. "Maybe he's preparing for World War II, laughed Cameron Davis, the class clown who turned every situation into an opportunity for entertainment. "Or maybe he misses his soldier daddy who never comes home." For a moment, just a moment, Kevin closed his eyes and clenched his fists. But when he opened them again, there was something different in his gaze. It wasn't despair or sadness like everyone expected to see. It was the dangerous serenity of someone who knew exactly what card he was holding and was just waiting for the perfect moment to play it. "Keep laughing," Kevin muttered so quietly that only he could hear. "Keep laughing while you can." What those privileged teenagers didn't know was that every laugh, every cruel comment, every moment of humiliation was being carefully catalogued in the mind of a young man who had learned from a very early age that the best military strategy is not to attack when the enemy expects it. It's to wait until they feel completely secure in their superiority. If this story of prejudice and overcoming adversity touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, Black Voices, to find out how a simple moment of humiliation would become the catalyst for a revelation that no one at Lincoln High would ever forget. There, in front of all the scornful stares, Kevin stood firm like someone guarding a secret too powerful to be revealed before the right time. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge doesn't come from our own hands. She descends from the heavens in a roar of turbines that makes the ground shake. The escalation of cruelty began during recess when Tyler Morrison decided that mockery alone wasn't enough. He needed a bigger audience, a more public, more devastating humiliation. The schoolyard became the perfect stage for his sadistic performance. "Everyone look." Tyler climbed onto one of the picnic tables, his voice echoing across the crowded courtyard. "Our little soldier is going to show us some military moves. Come on, Kevin. Do a push-up for the crowd." Dozens of cell phones instantly rose, ready to capture every second of the humiliation that was about to unfold. The crowd formed a circle like bloodthirsty spectators in a modern Roman arena. Ashley Bennett filmed with a cruel smile, already imagining the likes she would get when she posted it on her social media. Kevin remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the horizon, as if he were in a real military formation. His upright posture and controlled breathing contrasted sharply with the chaos around him. To any attentive observer, there was something disconcerting about that serenity, as if he had already faced storms far worse than a bunch of spoiled teenagers. "What's up, Newt?" Cameron Davis approached, his voice dripping with venom. Or are you waiting for orders from your imaginary commander? I bet your dad isn't even a real soldier. He's probably just another mall security guard pretending to be important. The mention of his father caused something imperceptible to happen on Kevin's face. It wasn't visible anger or despair. It was the opposite. An almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his mouth so quick that only someone studying his every movement could have noticed. It was the smile of someone who had just heard the most ironic joke in the world. What those privileged kids didn't know was that Kevin Washington had grown up on military bases around the world. While they played video games, he learned Morse code from real soldiers. While they complained about having to clean their rooms, he folded uniforms with pinpoint precision at the age of 7. You know what? Tyler climbed down from the table and approached Kevin dangerously. I'll give you a free tip, soldier. This isn't the place for people like you. Why don't you go back to the ghetto where you found that costume? The word costume echoed across the courtyard like a gunshot. Several students laughed, but some, the more perceptive ones, began to notice something strange. Kevin wasn't backing away. He wasn't stammering excuses. He wasn't showing any of the typical signs of a victim of bullying. On the contrary, he seemed to be assessing the situation. In fact, Kevin was doing just that. During his 17 years on this earth, he had watched his father deal with conflict countless times. The first lesson he had learned was never react in the heat of the moment. Observe, process, plan, execute, and that was exactly what he was doing. Kevin's cell phone vibrated discreetly in his pocket. A message that no one else could see, but it made his eyes flash with a new intensity. It was an update on something he had been waiting for months. A confirmation that would turn this moment of humiliation into the catalyst for a devastating revelation. Tyler, Kevin said for the first time, his voice calm and controlled, cutting through the air like a sharp blade. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Because I can guarantee you one thing. You're going to remember this day for the rest of your life. The crowd fell silent for a moment. There was something in Kevin's voice, a quiet authority that didn't match the image of a victim everyone had created in their minds. Tyler felt an involuntary shiver run up his spine, but his arrogance spoke louder than his instinct for self-preservation. Oh, how scary. Tyler laughed loudly, trying to regain control of the narrative. What are you going to do? Call your daddy to beat me up? Oh, right. I bet he's not even around. Real military men don't have time for failed little boys. Kevin closed his eyes for a second, not in pain, but in something that seemed almost like pity. When he opened them again, there was a disturbing serenity there. Tyler, he said softly. My father is closer than you think. In fact, he's closer than anyone at this school could ever imagine. Ashley stopped filming for a moment, confused by the sudden change in dynamics. There was something about Kevin's demeanor that didn't make sense. He no longer looked like a victim. He looked like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The bell rang, signaling the end of the break, but the tension in the air remained thick as fog. The students began to disperse, but many continued to look back, feeling that they had missed something important in that exchange. Kevin walked calmly toward the building, his footsteps echoing with the same military cadence as always. But now there was something different, a quiet anticipation, as if he were counting down the seconds to something no one else could see coming. In his pocket, his cell phone vibrated again. This time it was a 5-word message that made his heart race. Operation approved. Arrival confirmed. Tomorrow. Tyler and his crew laughed and dispersed, convinced they had established their dominance over yet another easy victim. They had no idea they had just provoked something that was years beyond their comprehension, and that in less than 24 hours, their perception of power and privilege would be shattered in such a public and devastating way that it would change Lincoln High forever. Each new humiliation only strengthened something inside Kevin that his oppressors couldn't see. A silent force fueled by the very injustice they sought to impose. What those privileged teenagers didn't know was that every act of contempt was writing their own sentence of defeat, one line at a time. The next morning, Kevin arrived at school an hour earlier than usual. The empty parking lot echoed only with the sound of his military footsteps as he walked straight to the office. There was something different about his posture. No longer the controlled resignation of the previous day, but a quiet determination that made the air around him vibrate with contained energy. "Can I help you, dear?" asked Mrs. Rodriguez, the secretary, looking curiously at the young man who rarely spoke to school staff. "I need to talk to Principal Peterson. It's about today's event." Kevin placed a sealed envelope on the counter, his words laden with an authority that didn't match his apparent age. Mrs. Rodriguez frowned, confused. "What event?" "We don't have any special events scheduled for today." But as she opened the envelope and quickly read the contents, her eyes widened. "Oh my God, is this real?" Kevin just nodded, a faint smile touching the corner of his mouth. "Very real. And it starts at 2 o'clock sharp. I suggest you get the gym sound system ready and clear the football field." As Mrs. Rodriguez rushed to find Principal Peterson, Kevin walked calmly through the empty hallways. Each step echoed like a countdown, each breath controlled like a soldier preparing for the decisive battle. What no one at Lincoln High knew was that Kevin had spent the last 3 months not only enduring the humiliations, but documenting every one of them. Every racist comment, every joke about his father, every moment of cruelty had been carefully recorded, not out of petty revenge, but as evidence for a much greater purpose. Tyler Morrison arrived at school 20 minutes later, his truck roaring through the parking lot as it always did to announce his arrival. He found Kevin standing calmly next to his locker, but there was something different in the air. Other students whispered more than usual, and some staff members seemed agitated. "Hey, little soldier," Tyler approached with his usual cruel smile. "Did you sleep with your military teddy bear last night, Tyler?" Kevin turned slowly, his eyes meeting the quarterback's with an intensity that made the boy involuntarily take a step back. "Are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this? Because after 2 o'clock, there's no turning back." Ashley Bennett and Cameron Davis approached, drawn by the tension in the air. Ashley already had her phone in her hand, ready to film another moment of entertainment at Kevin's expense. "Dude, are you losing it?" Cameron laughed nervously. "What's this about 2 o'clock? Are you going to call your daddy's private army?" The mention of his father made Kevin close his eyes for a moment, not in pain, but in something that seemed almost like anticipation. When he opened them again, there was a disturbing serenity there, as if he knew exactly what was about to happen. "You'll find out in a few hours," Kevin said softly, closing his locker with a definitive click. "And when you do, remember this moment. Remember every word you said, every laugh you laughed, every second you chose to be cruel to someone you assumed was defenseless." The bell rang, but for the first time in months, Kevin didn't immediately head to class. Instead, he walked calmly toward the gym where Principal Peterson was waiting for him with a look of shock and nervousness. "Kevin, I didn't know. None of us knew." Peterson stammered, holding the paper Mrs. Rodriguez had given him. "This will change everything, the entire school, all the students." "It was meant to be this way," Kevin replied calmly. 3 years of silence, 3 years of preparation. My father always said that the best strategy is not to attack when the enemy expects it, but when they feel most secure in their superiority. During morning break, strange rumors began to spread throughout the school. Staff members whispered in the hallways. The principal had canceled all afternoon meetings, and there was an inexplicable buzz in the air. Tyler and his crew tried to press Kevin for answers, but he just smiled and went about his business. "Something strange is going on," Ashley whispered to Brittany Walsh during lunch. "The teachers are acting like something big is about to happen, and that weirdo Kevin seems different today." "Different how?" Brittany asked, biting into her organic salad as she watched Kevin sitting alone at his usual table, confident like he knows something we don't. At the next table, Kevin ate his sandwich in silence, but his eyes occasionally drifted to the clock on the wall. 1 hour and 15 minutes. His hand discreetly touched the phone in his pocket, where a recent message simply read, "ETA confirmed. Alpha team in position." What Tyler Morrison, Ashley Bennett, and all the other privileged students at Lincoln High didn't know was that Kevin Washington wasn't just the son of some military man. He was the son of Colonel James Washington, commander of the 3rd Airborne Division, a decorated veteran of 3 international conflicts, and one of the most respected officers in the United States Armed Forces. And today, after 3 years of serving on classified missions around the world, Colonel Washington was coming home, not quietly, not discreetly, but in a way that would forever etch into the memory of every person who had ever underestimated his son the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect. Kevin finished his lunch and walked calmly toward the football field where he could already hear a distant sound on the horizon. A sound that made his heart race and his eyes shine with pride and anticipation. It was when everyone laughed that something unexpected began to take shape. Not just in the blue sky above Lincoln High, but mainly in Kevin's determined gaze, which now shone with an intensity that made some of those present realize that something extraordinary was about to completely rewrite the social hierarchy of that school forever. At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the first sound came as a distant whisper in the blue sky above Lincoln High. But in a matter of seconds, that whisper turned into a deafening roar that shook the school windows in their frames. Tyler Morrison was in the middle of another one of his cruel performances in the courtyard when the noise started. "Look everyone, our little soldier is waiting for Daddy to come home," he shouted to the crowd of students gathered around Kevin. "I bet he won't even show up." It was at that moment that the gigantic shadow passed over their heads. The Black Hawk UH-60 Lima Charlie rose from the horizon like a physical manifestation of American military power. Its twin turbines creating a gale that forced all the students to take cover. The helicopter was huge, painted in official military green with the insignia of the 3rd Airborne Division gleaming in the afternoon sun. Ashley Bennett dropped her phone on the concrete floor, the screen cracking as she watched, open-mouthed as the military aircraft executed a perfect approach toward the football field. This can't be happening," she stammered, her voice barely audible above the roar of the turbines. Kevin remained exactly where he was. But now his posture had changed completely. He was no longer the boy who silently endured humiliation. He was a young soldier standing at attention, awaiting the arrival of his commander. The helicopter landed on the football field with surgical precision, its wheels touching the grass exactly on the 50-yard line. Before the turbines even began to slow, the side door slid open and a figure in full dress uniform emerged from the aircraft. Colonel James Washington was 6 feet tall with broad shoulders covered by an impeccable uniform adorned with medals and decorations that told the story of 3 decades of exemplary military service. His green beret was positioned at the perfect military angle. And when his eyes swept across the crowd of students huddled around the field, there was the unshakable authority of someone who had commanded men in combat zones. "Oh my God," whispered Cameron Davis, his face turning pale as the reality of the situation began to sink in. That's really his dad." Behind the colonel, 3 more officers emerged from the helicopter, all in full dress uniform, marching in perfect formation toward the center of the field where Kevin awaited them. Principal Peterson ran desperately down the sideline, trying to reach the site of the unannounced ceremony that was about to transform Lincoln High into something completely different. Tyler Morrison felt his legs buckle as he realized the magnitude of his ignorance. For months, he had mocked the son of one of America's most decorated military officers. His jokes about fake soldiers and absent fathers now echoed in his mind like social death sentences. "Attention!" Colonel Washington's voice cut through the air like a knife, and instantly everyone present, students, teachers, staff, fell silent. His presence commanded respect in a way none of these privileged teenagers had ever experienced before. Kevin walked toward his father with a perfect military posture he had practiced since childhood. When he was 3 feet away, he stopped and executed a flawless salute. "Colonel Washington," he said in a loud, clear voice, requesting permission to report on a mission accomplished. The colonel returned the salute with obvious pride shining in his eyes. "Permission granted. Private Washington, present your report." Kevin turned to face the silent crowd of classmates who had tortured him for months. His voice was clear, controlled, but laden with a dignity that made several students lower their eyes in shame. "Over the past 90 days, I have conducted a social reconnaissance operation at this institution. I have systematically documented instances of racial discrimination, systematic bullying, and institutional prejudice." Kevin removed a sealed envelope from his pocket. This report contains photographic evidence, audio recordings, and testimonials that will be forwarded to the school district and the State Department of Education. Ashley Bennett began to cry silently as she realized that every cruel moment, every malicious laugh, every racist comment had been carefully documented. By someone she had completely underestimated. Furthermore, Kevin continued, his voice growing stronger, I have established contact with 17 military families in this region whose children have reported similar experiences at various educational institutions. A federal investigation into patterns of discrimination in public schools will be launched next week. Colonel Washington nodded approvingly before addressing the stunned crowd. My son has demonstrated the same courage and integrity that I expect from any soldier under my command. He endured adversity, maintained his dignity, and carried out his mission with military precision. Tyler Morrison was visibly shaking now, tears streaming down his face as he realized he had spent months humiliating the son of a military hero. His jokes about fake soldiers and absent fathers now sounded like echoes of his own cruel ignorance. Kevin, the colonel continued, placing his hand on his son's shoulder. You have proven that true character is not measured by how easily one surrenders to adversity, but by the dignity with which one faces it. As father and son embraced in the center of the field under the soothing roar of the Blackhawks turbines, all of Lincoln High witnessed a lesson that no textbook could ever teach, that real heroes walk among us, carrying their battles in silence until the moment comes to show what they are truly made of. As revelations piled up and masks fell away, one question remained. Would these privileged young people finally learn the difference between true power and mere arrogance? Or would it take their families facing the consequences of a federal investigation to understand the true meaning of responsibility and respect? 6 months after the day that became known as Blackhawk Landing, Lincoln High was a completely different school. Kevin Washington was no longer the quiet kid who endured humiliation. He was the student council president elected by a landslide of votes from classmates who finally understood the true meaning of leadership. The federal investigation launched by his report had uncovered a systematic pattern of discrimination that extended far beyond the school walls. 17 school districts were required to implement diversity programs, and Lincoln High became a national model for how institutions can transform themselves when confronted with their own failings. Tyler Morrison never fully recovered from the public humiliation. The video of the moment he realized he had spent months mocking the son of a military hero went viral with over 5 million views. His chances of getting a college scholarship evaporated when recruiters discovered his history of racist bullying documented in the federal report. He finished high school virtually isolated, carrying the weight of having become a national symbol of privileged ignorance. Ashley Bennett desperately tried to rebuild her online image, but every post was flooded with comments reminding her of her cruelty on film. Her aspirations to become a digital influencer died when brands refused to associate themselves with someone who had systematically attacked a young soldier. She ended up deleting all her social media accounts and transferring to a school in another state where she tried to start over, far from the consequences of her actions. Cameron Davis, the class clown, discovered that his jokes about soldiers and military families had made him persona non grata in a community that deeply respected military service. His own grandfather, a Vietnam War veteran, was so ashamed that he refused to speak to his grandson for months. But the most significant transformation took place within the school itself. Kevin's report not only documented individual cases of bullying, it revealed how the administration had systematically ignored patterns of discrimination. Principal Peterson was replaced by a black educator with experience in inclusion programs, and new protocols were implemented to protect minority students. Kevin discovered that his strategy of documenting everything had set a legal precedent. Civil rights lawyers began using his case as a model for suing other institutions. Military colleges offered him full scholarships, impressed not only by his intelligence, but by his maturity in turning personal injustice into systemic change. Colonel Washington visited the school regularly now, no longer as a dramatic surprise, but as a guest speaker at leadership programs. His constant presence reminded the entire school community that real heroes exist and that often their children walk silently among us, carrying legacies of courage that are only revealed when tested by adversity. During one of these lectures, 6 months after the incident, Tyler Morrison hesitantly approached Kevin after the presentation. His hands were shaking and tears were streaming down his face when he finally found the courage to speak. "Kevin, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that those were the worst months of my life. Not because I lost popularity or scholarships, but because I finally understood what a terrible person I had become." Kevin looked at him for a moment, seeing no longer the arrogant bully, but a broken young man who had learned a devastating lesson about consequences. "Tyler," he replied calmly, "my father always taught me that true character is revealed not when everything is going well, but when we face the consequences of our choices. You're facing yours. The question is, what kind of man will you choose to be from here on out?" The conversation was overheard by dozens of students who witnessed a moment of grace and maturity that no traditional classroom could teach. Kevin hadn't just defeated his oppressors. He had risen above the need for petty revenge, demonstrating the kind of leadership that transforms entire institutions. 2 years later, Kevin graduated as valedictorian. His speech broadcast nationally as an example of how young people can face adversity with dignity and purpose. He was accepted to West Point Military Academy on a full scholarship. Following in his father's footsteps, but now with a deep understanding of how to use privilege and power to protect the vulnerable rather than oppress them. Tyler Morrison sent a letter of recommendation to the military academy, describing how Kevin had demonstrated true leadership by turning a situation of injustice into an opportunity for collective growth. It was one of the few positive things Tyler was able to do to try to repair the damage he had caused. The lesson Lincoln High learned spread far beyond its walls. That every person carries stories, struggles, and legacies that we can't see at first glance. That judging someone by their appearance or background is not only morally wrong, but strategically dumb. Because we never know when that different kid might be the child of someone with the power to change our lives forever. Kevin Washington proved that the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you, but building something so extraordinary that it turns injustice into inspiration. He used every moment of humiliation as fuel to create change that would protect other young people from facing what he had faced. 4 years ago, Kevin was just another kid being humiliated for wearing his father's uniform. Today, he is a national symbol of how to respond to injustice with intelligence, courage, and unshakable dignity. Kevin's real victory wasn't humiliating his oppressors. It was transforming them into better people while building a legacy that honored both his own strength and his father's sacrifice. He discovered that when we confront prejudice with truth and dignity, we don't just win, we lift up the entire society around us. If this story of transformation and justice has inspired you, subscribe to the channel, Black Voices, for more stories that prove that sometimes heroes walk quietly among us, waiting only for the right moment to show that true strength manifests itself through integrity, not revenge.